Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jason Whitehead. I'm the CEO of Tri Tuns, and we're here today to talk about Deja Vu. Is customer success management going the same way as CRM? We're really excited about this topic and think there are a lot of great lessons to be learned from all of the work that was done in the past 20 years over customer relationship management, and want to see what are some of the good things that came out of that, and also some of the challenges that we can learn to apply them to customer success management. A quick little bit about my background. I am the CEO of Tri Tuns, and we are a customer success and user adoption training consulting firm. I've worked with a lot of organizations to build out their customer success strategies and to help develop their teams and playbooks, all that great stuff, but also work with a lot of organizations buying technology to help develop user adoption programs and drive success within their own organization. And a large amount of my personal background has been working in CRM for the past 20 years in a variety of roles and formats, from consultant to internal system owner to a few other things. Through this experience, I've really learned a lot about customer success management, and I'm really excited to host this webinar today with Sue Moore, my co-host and also my business partner. We have a joint training offering that we have right now, as well as we'll soon be launching a subscription professional development program for customer success professionals. We're really excited about that, so watch this space. And with that, Sue, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. Thanks, Jason. So my name is Sue Moore, and as you can probably gather by my lousy accent, I'm British, so nobody's perfect. So I'm British, but I consider myself really European in soul. I've lived across different countries, Germany, in Paris for several years, and now I'm here based in Lisbon. And so I have my own consultancy company in customer success. It's called Success Track Enterprise, which alludes to Star Trek. So I don't know if any Star Trek fans out there. Basically, I provide consultancy services to help companies based here in Europe to either define and refine their customer success strategies, and also some coaching and mentoring possibilities. And I'm really excited, Jason, now to be joining you and to being your partner to do this training program in Europe. So that's absolutely fantastic. So like you, Jason, I also have a background. I come from the CRM world. I started back, God, this is showing my age, probably 20 years ago, doing the very first CRM projects in France, in Paris. So yes, I'm really excited to do this webinar to compare the differences between CRM and customer success management.
Great. Thank you so much, Sue. And it's such a pleasure to work with you. I've learned so much from our conversations and discussions together. So let's jump right in, though. I think to start off, we wanted to just bounce some questions back and forth to each other. And the first one that I think really has come up is, to make sure we're starting from the same page, can you actually go ahead, Sue, and just define what we mean by customer success?
Yeah, sure. And for me, customer success really is a holistic program to drive sustained value and growth for customers, first of all, and then consequently for vendors. I think today we're having a lot of different interpretations about customer success. Often people think that it's a fancy term to describe what previously existed in terms of either sales or account management, or indeed support. But it's not that at all. And I think as well, a lot of people consider customer success to be simply a post-contractual team of people who are dealing with and partnering the customer after the contract is signed. But in fact, it really is the responsibility of all internal roles. And those roles can either be client-facing or not. So it really is a corporate-wide holistic strategy, which is really going to impact the whole organization, the people who work in the organization, the processes, and the tools. And I think that, in fact, now, with the customer success, we're really having a whole new opportunity which never existed before in the days of CRM, where we can actually work together as partners in a real partnership to generate what I call a viral spiral of health and wealth. And I think a lot of people, and this is what we're going to be developing later, Jason, as well, really think of customer success from the pure tool point of view. And it's not, it really is a greater strategy than just the tool. But we'll be talking that in greater detail. So as I'm going to be comparing customer success to CRM, Jason, what's the definition of CRM?
Yeah, I think it's a great place to start. CRM, or customer relationship management, I came into the very early days of this, and it was really initially defined and projected as a strategy for managing an organization's relationship. And it really was meant to be a holistic shift in how organizations focused on their customer and really trying to move beyond just a product focus with a customer that they were trying to sell widgets to much more of a, let's really understand our customer's business and understand their needs so that we can build a relationship so that they trust us and that we can continue to work with them over the long term. And I think so much of that was the idea of, streamlining processes and improving the sales funnel and all that great stuff to really stay closer and more tightly connected. But then something really interesting sort of happened as you started to go through this and these management ideas and new approaches towards the relationship between a vendor and a customer. Somehow it really became focused on CRM as the tool and the technology and Siebel and Salesforce and all those great things. And I think somewhere over the past 20 years, people have now think of CRM just as a tool and technology. Oh, we need to have a CRM system as opposed to we need to be closer to our customers. And when you talk about CRM, people will often talk about some process improvements. They don't really think about a huge holistic management shift in approach. And perhaps some of that mindset is already stuck in there, but I think a lot of times now people just automatically go towards the tool process. And somewhere along the line, I think CRM has really lost its focus on that human aspect and the relationship component and really, just focusing on the tools piece. But, so that's sort of just a high level piece. But Sue, do you want to walk us through some of the history and evolution of CRM? Because I think, you've really seen a lot of it over the time.
Yeah, well, thanks for showing my age here again, Jason. Yeah, I did mention it, so I've let myself into that. Yeah, I actually started out working with the very first CRMs, Siebel was one of the first CRMs, the on-premise Siebel, back in the 90s. And I think that in those days, Siebel and particularly any CRM in those days was more about Salesforce automation. So it was mainly, I would say, 80% focused for salespeople. There were a few modules out there for marketing and for services, but the majority was for salespeople. What I noticed then, there was tons of money actually thrown at those CRM projects. So, we had the likes of Siebel, Microsoft, PeopleSoft, Sage. And then when Salesforce came into the scene, so it was like 2000, the year 2000, something like that, SaaS, I think, really changed the game. It really changed the way that CRMs were being commercialized. And just for the anecdote, in fact, it was Salesforce who were actually at a party back in 2005 in California, celebrating at the time their exponential growth. They were growing from a company of $500 million in 2004 to $2,000 million in 2005, celebrating this growth when all of a sudden there was an Irish guy who was responsible for the MEA at the time called David Dempsey, who suddenly raised his hand and said, look, wait a minute, you have a hole in our bucket here with a serious threat of churn. So that's how Salesforce actually started to do sales customer success very seriously back in 2005. If you look at Salesforce today, I've seen that their predictions, their forecast for this year, 2019, are $16 billion. And out of that $16 billion, it's amazing. 80% of that would actually come from their current customer base. So that means, the customer success. So that's amazing. It's an amazing story, I think, in terms of CRM and customer success. And then just to continue the history, people started to cotton on to what you were saying a little bit about more the philosophy around customer relationship management, not just being the tool. And they cottoned on to the R of the customer relationship management, so the relationship. But unfortunately, that didn't really cotton on either, because associated to that was the promise of the 360-degree view of the customer. And unfortunately, that was a dream which up until now has never really been realized. And I think we're still struggling with even CRMs today to really obtain this holistic 360-degree view of the customer. And so if you look at the figures for CRM projects, since Gartner actually stated back in 2001 that the failure rate of CRMs was 50%, which is enormous, ever since then, there have been research firms actually reporting on CRM failure rates. And year to year, this has always been ranging between 30 to 70%. So huge failure rates. And we certainly don't want to see customer success management going the same way. So Jason, maybe you could just tell us, what do you think are the main reasons for these high failure rates in CRMs?
You know, I think that there are a lot of different reasons here, and that frightening stat of 30 to 70%, you know, that really hasn't gone down. And I remember early in my career, you know, back in the late 90s and those pieces being on CRM projects, and you'd go and you get the customer live, and then you talk to them 6 months or a year later, and they really were not getting the value. And even just today, you know, Tri Tuns, we still get a lot of calls from customers where they've gone live with their CRM a couple of years ago, and they're not getting the value, even though the system's up and stable. And they don't know what to do, and it's still a huge issue. And when we look at some of the reasons why, you know, we find a few different things. And one is, I think, throughout the whole CRM effort that is really meant to solve some new management challenges and help the business move forward, it trickles down and it's just a glorified database in a lot of ways. And I think also the databases seem to be, you know, kind of disparate and not particularly really pertinent and actionable. And there's a lot of noise out there as well, too. And what's been very interesting, too, is still this whole idea of you know, a lot of siloed activity and a lot of data silos when you look in the tool, but also when you look at the way people are actually aligning how they work between sales and marketing and service, and even different geographies. People are still really looking at it from a, what's the tool going to do for me, as opposed to how do I need to adjust my business, because I understand that the relationship with the customer is across all of our silos in our organization, and actually enable everyone else to go and do their job effectively as well, too, so the customer benefits. So, you know, the silos are still there, and there seems to be a recognition that the silos are there, but not necessarily an appetite or activities going on to break those down. You know, I think another issue has also been that so many IT projects, especially CRM in the early days, were IT-led, and there was little involvement from the business stakeholders, and the projects really didn't have as much business need and compelling efforts there to really focus on that shift of philosophy and the shift of behavior of how we're conducting business with our customers. It was just, again, IT-led and sort of a tech piece. And the big one, though, has also been that there was little or no effort typically to go and define and measure the value that they got from their investments in CRM, not just the tool, but the whole initiative and the whole efforts around that. So there is this idea that if we spend a lot of money and get a tool out there, of course, you know, magic will happen and these great things come forward, but they don't actually come back and say, yes, this is when and how we've measured the value that we've gotten, and here's how we'll take corrective action if it's lower than expected, or here's how we'll build on our success if it's higher than expected. And I think that's a real challenge for CRM, that without knowing how you're performing, it leads itself to some really bad situations very quickly. And that's sort of, with that piece there, one of the other big things we've seen is that there was really very little change management or just ongoing adoption efforts around it. Really, a lot of this was just a little bit of training on the tool and sometimes some process training around the CRM, typically focused on go live. And there was really no effort around ongoing behavior to say, have we achieved these goals of a tighter relationship? Have we broken down the silos? Have we built this 360-degree view? It was really, well, we'll just train people on the tool, and again, magic will happen, and there we are. So I think those are some of the reasons that we have in there. But Sue, are there some others that you can think of?
Yeah, I really agree with those reasons, Jason. I think that the CRMs became dormant and siloed databases, I think, as a result of the CRM projects not really looking at the people side of things, and getting everyone to really collaborate and get to know each other's roles and responsibilities, and to really have something very defined about data input and governance. And this really makes me think back to some findings of, it was a CRM survey, in fact, which I conducted with companies based in France 10 years ago in 2009. And the final question of this survey asked people who had actually been using a customer relationship management tool, in hindsight, what would they consider to be the success factors of their project? And so we gave them several possible replies. And it was really interesting in that survey to see that the top 3 replies were all related to the people side of things. So they all said things like, yeah, we didn't implicate the sponsors. We didn't really have enough backing and drive from the direct managers or supervisors. And we didn't know how to drive user adoption. So those were the first 3 reasons, all of, you know, the human nature, the people side of things. And it was only in second place did they place organizational aspects within the replies. And in the last place were reasons related to the tool, so the tool aspects, features, and functions. So I think that really is a clear learning.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other reasons I think for the failures of those CRMs was that they didn't really look into the what's in it for me factor. I think, you know, the majority of the added value for CRMs was more for the management and the executives to really keep on track whether or not their teams were actually hitting their quotas. And there wasn't really any consideration for what's in it for me at different levels of the company. So what would be the gains for the company as a whole? What would be the gains for the different teams, either the sales teams or the marketing teams or the service teams using the CRM? And what would be the gains for the individual contributors? So I think that was one of the failures as well, for not really giving that drive for wanting to adopt the CRMs and get benefits from them. So we've seen the failures. So Jason, what do you think are the similar tendencies and dangers which we are now seeing in the field of customer success?
Yeah, I think there's so much, and this is really the part that I enjoy about this conversation, is already when we look back at this, we're starting to see some parallels that CRM came in with a lot of bluster and funding and excitement, and then it quickly got degraded to tools. And what I'm seeing already with customer success management is that there's a bunch of people who really can evangelize the idea of that if we make our customers achieve their business outcomes and make them successful using our tool and their organization, and they achieve business benefits, then they will stay with us and buy more, and then we will benefit. And I think there's a lot of people who get that philosophy, but then somehow down the track, it really degrades very quickly into a tools discussion already. And that's very interesting and alarming in the same way, because I think people quickly lose sight of the bigger issue, which is why are customers not being successful adopting technology and getting value from it, and not just ours, but their own. Instead, coming back to what are the tools that we can use to service customers post-sale. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that. People see it as potential magic wand. So I have a churn problem, so if we have a platform, we can do more things, and we can do a lot of things faster, better, cheaper. But those things may or may not move the needle for our customer. But if we have a tool, there's this hope that will make everything wonderful. And I think that comes back to the not focusing on the real issue, where part of the challenge needs to be, you need to figure out how to solve your customer's root cause issue and how to change your relationship with them, which is really 9 times out of 10 is the issue is for some reason they're not adopting the tool in a way that generates business value for them, and they're not recognizing the value that they're getting. And there's a whole host of reasons behind all of that. But I think a lot of organizations, until they can figure out really how they're going to solve that issue, they're going to have a lot of problems. And instead, come back to what are the tools, what are the process changes, what are pretty much all the non-human issues that we can address. And I think it's really is where we're getting into the big challenge here, which is how do we prevent customer success programs and their efforts from failing to deliver the business outcomes that are expected, and not just for your customer, but also within your own organization. We're already seeing customer success teams that organizations have invested in customer success and have cut the entire department, or on their second or third iteration of trying to launch an effective customer success practice within the organization. They're still not getting there. It's always alarming to me when we go and talk with these folks and tell me what happened. How did you get here? And how did you go 2 or 3 times? And there are a lot of parallels of they still haven't really figured out how to solve the root cause issues, and they're focusing on some of the mechanics, which I think is very similar to the organizations that struggled with CRM. But those are a couple that I'm seeing. So what are you seeing some of the main similarities and sort of the deja vu moments that you're seeing between CRM and customer success?
Yeah, I think there were several deja vu, and just to list a few of them. I think originally, as we said, the CRM was intended to be a new business philosophy with the famous R of the customer, the CRM, the relationship side of it. And unfortunately, that soon became overshadowed by the tool. So as you said at the beginning today, whenever we hear CRM, everybody thinks of the tool. We don't think of it as a business philosophy. So I think we really need to be careful that customer success does not go the same way. And that it's simply perceived as a tool or indeed a set of tools. And I think the best tool in the world will not solve any problems. I think what's really important before actually implementing any tool, whatever it is, there has to be a solid underlying strategic foundation. And in fact, as part of the consulting which I do with Success Track Enterprise, I have a framework which I called opt-in. and an opt-in, obviously, because we want to make sure that the people who are using your tools actually opt in for life. But it's an acronym meaning organization, processes, tools, information. We do it in that order chronologically, but the information, of course, is something which you start off right when you're actually defining the organization, and which then becomes more sophisticated as you're going along. So that's really important for customer success management, as it is for CRM. And I like to use the kind of comparison. I think it's like trying to drive and win a race with a Ferrari on a sandy and bumpy cross-country rally track, right? Inversely, you could have a less luxurious car and drive and win on a well-defined Formula One racing track on the condition that the tracks are well mapped and there are great pilots, of course, in the driving seat. So that analogy really sums it up. I also think deja vu in the perception of the promise of the tools. So it's particularly in terms of growth. The CRMs, they were implemented basically to generate more leads and close deals faster, whereas customer success is more about retaining revenue and expanding it. I think there's also an overlap, a deja vu overlap of the promise about the 360-degree client view. So when CRM positioned themselves as the 360-degree view of the customer, this was never really happened, in fact. And I think due to the human failure and the non-alignment cross-functionally, as we said. So I think it would really be interesting now. We have a chance, I think, with the customer success platforms to take off from where the CRM has failed and to really provide that famous 360-degree view of the client. And as you said, I think the deja vu is the ROI, or rather lack of it. So we didn't see much ROI for the CRMs. And I think we really have to try and prove for customer success. It's not just about proving the ROI of investing in a customer success platform, but it's really proving the ROI of investing in a whole approach, a whole philosophy around customer success. So I think those are the main ones for me. Can you add any other ones, Jason?
Yeah, I think those are some really good ones, because it's definitely like, here we go again. I think another similarity that we're seeing is already the silo issue. And with customer success management, we always get the questions like, how do we work with sales more effectively? How do we work with support more effectively? What does that need to look like? And I think there's still a large amount of siloed activity going on in customer success management. And we saw that with CRM, that initially the promise was, through the act of implementing tools, through the act of adjusting our processes, we'll break down some of these silos. But the reality is it never really happened that much. And we're seeing that with customer success too. I think there's a lot of, we've got a customer success team and, we just need to have better handoffs with sales, as opposed to rethinking how do we work more collaboratively? How do we need to rethink the sales process from the very beginning that will lead to a subscription renewal and the subscription sales process, as opposed to a one-time sale process? So still a lot of silos and a lot of issues around all that, which are really going to be a big challenge. And I think to a degree, also coming back to the tool thing, there are still some data sharing issues around that, but still just that siloed mentality and handoff mentality is I think, still a big challenge. And I think the other piece too is there was a real expectation with CRM, and I think we're seeing it with customer success, is that we're going to make these investments and we're going to have really some quick demonstrations of improvement. And, both CRM and customer success efforts here, and not just the tool piece, they require a long-term shift, and the long-term shift in how you work with your customers. And if you are managing your business on a quarterly basis, or your investors are looking for quarterly lift, you need to set expectations differently. Like, this is going to take a while. A lot of the organizations we work with, they're maybe 3 or 5 year contracts. So you've got to be able to invest in customer success program and have the lift and have the efforts quite a while before you get to that contract renewal discussion. And it takes time for the impact to funnel through. I think the other piece sort of related to that is with customer success, it's many folks embrace it as a maturity model. It takes time to build and mature your capabilities, as well as to experiment with what's going to work for you and for your team in your industry with your customers. That something that works from a customer success perspective in one organization may not work well for you. So you've got to have time to figure out how to adjust things and what is the right solution for your organization. So trying to figure out how to get people to focus on the long term instead of that really short term instant gratification is pretty key. And then I think the other thing that we're seeing, and we saw this with customer success, that we saw in CRM, we're seeing with customer success now, is the rapid growth in number of platforms and tools out there. There are a lot of great things, and there's a lot of value to be had in both CRM and customer success tools. I'm not anti-tool, but I'm also, I think the rapid increase in tools, while it's great that it helps innovate in the industry and drives down some prices a bit, I think all the funding and money around those tools, what they do is they advocate for the particular problem that their tool can solve. So all the attention gets focused on the problem that the tool can solve, but not the other issues and challenges that are out there. And with customer success, so much more of it is not tool specific. It really is about driving adoption and business value and getting your customers to change how they work to better embrace technology, which is very different than platform tool. But I think there's so much other noise that it makes it a bit harder, which is really concerning. And I saw similar things with CRM. It was all the focus that the tool vendors had a lot of money and investors, and people were eager to buy. They were just writing massive checks to these folks without looking at all the other bigger issues that need to be addressed to get the outcome that they want. So those are some of the similarities I've seen from a Deja vu perspective. So what are some of the differences that you're seeing? Because there is some things that are unique about CRM and customer success that say, hey, it's not all the good stuff and all the bad stuff, but what are some of the unique challenges that you're seeing?
Yes, I think that there are quite a few differences as well. And the first one that springs to mind is the data difference. The CRMs give a view to the marketing and sales cycle. However, I think it's always been very linear and static by nature, the data of CRMs. And CRMs were actually designed with a linear path to narrow down to the first funnel, the so-called first funnel. Customer success data, on the other hand, needs to reflect a multitude of dynamic client data. And it needs to be centralized into one very powerful location. So customer success data, it really is a dynamic breathing beast, which is continually being fed and updated with dynamic information coming from customer ever-moving contexts. And I really like to, when we're talking about the difference between the CRM being so-called first funnel and the customer success being the so-called second funnel, when you see that often represented, you see it represented as an hourglass symbol. And I think that really speaks for itself, this symbology, this graph, because in fact, for the second funnel, you have the spout going outwards, it broadens out. And I think that's the complexity of a customer success platform, because it has so much data in there coming from so many different sources. And one of the advantage, of course, of the customer success platform is to make sense of this data. So it's very dynamic by nature. I think another difference between the two is what I call the stickiness difference. So in the days of pre-SaaS CRM, prior to Siebel, prior to Salesforce, buyers were often very sticky, but unfortunately not for the right reasons. So you were not actually getting any value, and you're probably completely unhappy with your CRM. You had to stick around due to the huge investment up front which you'd made. So it was really like being in a forced and unhappy marriage and having difficulty getting divorced. But now, of course, with customer success and the recurring revenue models, your customers can simply opt out at any time. So now, in fact, getting married is certainly easier, but also so is getting the divorce. So I think that now, if you want to make the marriage last longer, you have to sign the marriage vows with mutually agreed behaviors, expectations, and deliver upon those vowed outcomes. Otherwise, simply we'll get a really high divorce rate, right?
Yep. I love that example, and it's kind of like marriage would look so different if it came with a expiration date and a renewal option as opposed to forever. Just as you're mentioning that, one of the things that struck me is Jason Noble, who does a podcast series with me. He likes the term gravity, because he's like, I don't want people to feel stuck out of obligation, but gravity of being mutually attracted and saying, we're getting so much value here. What does that need to look like? And I think that's such a nice shift on it. Yeah,
that's a nice, romantic way of saying it as well. Thank you, Jason. Good. So another difference, I think, is about the nature of the engagement. So I think the CRM was very reactive. Even just talking about this 360-degree view of the customer. So just the wording here, the word of view is very active in nature. It's not at all proactive. So I think that now that we're actually talking about the customer success platforms, we probably know we no longer want a 360-degree view of the customer, but it's more like a 360-degree customer collaboration. I think that's what we need, and that's what we should try and set ourselves as the challenge, I think, in order for customer success platforms to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you see any other differences, Jason?
Yeah, one that I'm actually excited about is I think that so much of CRM was sort of an inside-out view versus outside-in with customer success. Or CRM was inside-out, and customer success is outside-in, at least it really should be. And by that, really looking at CRM started with how do we want to shift how we're organized and how we approach sales and how we operate internally in our internal business process, and what are some of the touch points with the customer. But there's a lot of we kind of stuff. And I think with customer success, what people are realizing is we need to really look at the end game for our customers and say, what will it take for them to get enough business value that they will want to renew and expand with us when their contract is up, whether it's a year or 3 years or a month or whatever it may be. And really starting from their success point and their renewal decision and working backwards from there and saying, okay, if this is what it takes for them to be successful, what are the problems that we need to help them solve that they've not been able to solve on their own? And then how do we work from there to figure out the right structure and organization that we have, the right resources and activities that we need to bring, the right materials and activities, and then work there to say, then what are the other changes we need to make and touch points within our internal organization that will impact all of these customer things. And I really think that switch of starting with the customer outside and then working in is going to be a big differentiator. And, I think the danger becomes, I think after a while, many organizations quickly talk about that, or they guess what they think the customer needs to be successful without actually really understanding and validating it, because it will shift and there's a lot of assumption there. But then they start to spend a lot of time just looking at that inside view without really thinking about the outside view as much. So making sure they validate there's going to be a challenge. Coming back to that, what we saw, especially in the early days of CRM, some of them were IT-led and tool-focused, and success was on time and on budget of the tool. I think with customer success, so much of this is business focused, and it's really tied to the need to protect revenues and to keep customers around. There's more of that business-led expedition. It's going to have some real teeth to it if it's done well and if you have the right supportive executive team behind it. But I think one of the things too that we're noticing, there's an implication here, and that is, many business people are experts on their day-to-day job and their products and their services, but they're not really experts on what it takes to get people to embrace and adopt technology and change the way they do their own jobs on a daily basis to make better use of this, and how to get people to change their own behaviors and be aware of that to help break down silos and to collaborate more effectively using technology. That's going to be an area of challenge for folks. So for me, the implication of all that is that customer success teams really need to help educate their customers and their internal stakeholders as well too on all the non-technical issues, the human issues, the behavioral piece, the process, organizational stuff, and conflict and reward systems that really need to be addressed within their own organization, within the customer's organization to get success. So I think the customer success team needs to move beyond just focusing on their product, but helping organizations address that bigger issue, which is how to get value from any product and how to get people to embrace technology and change the way they do business. So I think that's going to be that's a really big difference, but a big implication.
Yeah, I agree. I agree there, Jason. I always use I have an iceberg kind of symbol for that, where you see the emerge part of the iceberg, and it's always associated with the tangible things such as the tools. And all the submerged part of the iceberg are all the non-tangible human aspects of projects and customer success management deployments, and CRM deployments, whatever. And I think it's very difficult to get on top of those and to make people understand those. So they're just ignored often with kind of burying your head in the sand. And it's very difficult, all those human aspects. But yeah, you're right, that's really important, really.
Yep. Yeah, as we often say, the soft stuff is the hard stuff. It really is the big challenge. So before we jump forward to, I just wanted to let everyone know, if you do have any questions, please go ahead and type them into the Q&A section, because we're quickly approaching some time here and we've got some questions already. But before we get to those, Sue, could you quickly share with me, what do you think are some of the main lessons learned from CRM projects that can best be leveraged for customer success? And how can people best, come out of the deja vu saying, here's here's what I've taken from that and what I'm going to be on guard about.
Yeah, I think there are several lessons to be learned. I think the first one, we've touched on this, it really is to make sure that there's a business case for customer success and a real ROI. So we really need to find a continual way to really improve the impact and prove the impact of customer success investments. And so again, this is not just about investing in the tool, but it really is a holistic approach in investing in customer success. I think the other lesson learned is really don't underestimate change management. I think it's really very, very necessary to introduce a really solid change management methodology and to really take that top down so that all the executives, the top management are really involved in a cascade effect. So that everybody really understands what they have to do, why they're doing this, and what's in it for them. I think we also have an opportunity to make the 360-degree collaboration, not the 360-degree a reality. So I think that's a great opportunity for customer success. And I think the other lesson learned is that when you're actually doing customer success, there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. I learned from doing CRMs that in fact when you're trying to especially deploy internationally CRM, that there are differences culturally, processes are different, the ways of working are different, regulations are different across countries and across cultures. And so when you're doing customer success, particularly on an international level, then you really need to take that on board and make sure that you're actually adapting to the customer success teams. So again, not just about the tool, but about the whole ways of working, so that they in turn can then deliver successfully to their respective customers. So I think that's very important. Yes, definitely. So that is for the lessons learned. What, Jason, do you think can be the main recommendations that we can make about setting up a customer success?
Yep. I think there are a lot of ones out there. Obviously, as we've talked about several times, so I won't go into detail, it's not a tools issue. You'll probably need tools at some point, but don't anchor customer success around the tool. They're not synonymous, and don't get too focused on that. And don't get too excited about the tool. They can do great things, but they're not everything. I think one of the big things that we've definitely learned is you really do need that top-down buy-in and commitment from all the executives in your organization. And to really recognize that this does need to be a shift of how you're doing business, but you're doing it for the very business outcome of, if we don't have customer success and if our customers are not getting value, they're not renewing, and they're not and the whole reason we're making this investment, customers are not doing it on their own. So we've got to put some time and effort around this. But so many organizations that I've worked with, they spend 35 to 45% of their time fighting internal battles, trying to break down the silos and trying to deal with the other departments and to get people aligned around the customer's efforts and around what's going to make the customer achieve their goals in their organization. And there's a lot of internal resistance. And I think getting organizations to realize that we can no longer ignore these silos and be effective, we will not achieve our goals, is absolutely key. And then try and figure out what are the steps we need to bring in or the resources that we need, because it's really hard to change your organization yourself from the inside without some sort of external catalyst. I think many organizations are like, okay, we need some help here to get us over this hump. What does that need to look like? And here's one that I think is really big. You sort of touched on it with the change management discussion, but really how to help your customers focus on driving adoption and desired adoption. And by that, I mean, how do you get people to change the way they do their job on a daily basis to use your technology as designed and intended to achieve a business outcome? And so many organizations that we work with, the buyers of technology are really good at getting systemized, but they really struggle with how to drive adoption. In fact, I was speaking with the executive team of the software vendor just a few days ago, and they were saying that their customers are desperate for any kind of help around this because they recognize the need and they're committed to working on this stuff, but they don't necessarily know what to do, and they don't necessarily know what resources they have, and they don't have a vision for how do we put in place an adoption program that will carry on over the life of the system, because we have so many changes in over 10 years or 15 years. Staff are going to come in and out, the systems are going to evolve, our processes will change, whatever it needs to be. They don't know how to embrace long-term adoption. And I think change management is important, but also understanding that with this long-term commitment, it's an ongoing change. It's not a single change event. You can't just focus on the go live. So So that's going to be really key. And we're actually working with software vendors where it's not just to help them focus on how to make their product easier to use and navigate internally, but how to help your customers build their own internal success teams. That one takes some of the weight and pressure off of your work as a software vendor, but two really teaches them, sort of the teach a man to fish versus give a man a fish. P said this is a critical skill gap and competency gap in most organizations that you need to help them overcome. And if you don't, they're not going to get the value from your software. So it's a very different approach. And then I think, obviously, the other piece here is really making sure that you're measuring the return on investment and the value of customer success in general. Not just a tool, but really what's the business impact that it's having for your organization. And some of the leaders I've spoken with in customer success groups, they said, we were able to get enough commitment and resources to get started and get moving. But when we started to actually be able to link our activities and our forecast to the financial performance of the organization, and the CEO and the CFO could see what happens around churn of any particular customer and the activities that we need to do and the resources we need to do to change that, then suddenly they get a seat at the table, and that they were able to prove their worth and prove their value because they had done enough time. So figuring out how you can do that, but then use that information in a financial sense to really show why it's so important on a daily basis is really key. So
I can't stress enough the importance of that top-down cascade and commitment and sponsorship to really continue to thrive and adopt, and then consequently have the performance and the ROI.
Yep. And like I say, from all the software vendors I talk to, and we ask them the right questions, they're like, yeah, our customers really do want help with this, and they really do want the value that we can bring from this, and they're eager for it. So I think there's definitely an appetite out there from the customer perspective if it can move the needle. If it's really just perceived as, oh, all right, you're just marketing to me post-sale, but you're not actually helping me solve a problem I can't solve on my own, there's less of an interest, but there's definitely a need. And, one of the conversations I've had with a variety of different people has been moving from the ideal customer profile to what's your customer's ideal vendor profile, and what is it that they're really looking for you to help them with. And many times they're like, yeah, our customers do want us to help with this, so let's figure out how we do that. So anyway, that's just some of the things there, but let's go ahead and jump into some of the questions that we've received here. So to kind of get down to some of the first ones here, what are some recommendations on the product side of things that you could have?
Yeah, so I think that in terms of the product, I'm going to do a little shout out to our friend Dave Jackson here. So I think Dave's on listening. But I think that it's really important to try and embed customer success into the products. This is not saying that we're going to replace customer success, of course. This is just saying that you should really understand how your products are being delivered so that they're actually providing value to your customers, and so that they're intuitive for your customers. So you can actually start to design the products with customer success in mind. And I think that's really important, because this will then actually liberate time for customer success managers to actually spend more time on, I would say, the more difficult human aspects of their job, and for which technology could never replace. So we've spoken a lot about the human aspects. And so I think, when a customer success manager is really creating added value because he has the domain value, and he knows what they're talking about, and can really help the customers to actually achieve their expected outcomes through human intervention and not technological intervention, then that is great. So embedded into the product aspects, which will then liberate the customer success manager from doing, I would say, more repetitive and mundane aspects. And I think the other thing as well is to embed into the product aspects so that the direct managers and supervisors of the users can actually monitor and follow and see the progress of the users who are in their teams. And so they can actually see the different patterns, see the different behaviors, and actually have their role as a manager to actually help them get on board, and to actually help them to improve with their use and the use cases they're actually doing with the tool. So I think that's very important. And also, and as you said, to really have customers really understand that they have a responsibility for driving adoption. So if they see that there are peaks or troughs in the adoption of the tools, that they actually know how to intervene and what to do in order to drive adoption. So I think so that's that would be my
those are great
take
ones.
on that.
And
Mhm.
and those 2 points, the supervisors and managers, in our work with customers driving adoption internally, they're the single biggest driver of adoption, and they're the most overlooked.
Mhm.
And they oftentimes they don't know that it's their role to do it, and they don't really have the tools and the data and the feedback mechanisms that they really should have that would make it easier for them to do so. So anything that your product can do to make that easier for customers, supervisors, and managers to drive adoption, I think is huge.
Yeah.
And I really love what you just said about helping customers learn to take action when they see poor adoption. Some of the things that we've done is help customers figure out whose job is it and what should they do, because they don't always know what to do. But one of our customers, which is sells on a subscription basis, they have a tool that helps people understand the adoption level of their application. And they're actually teaching their customers from the very beginning, if you see low adoption, that's a signal for you to do something. It's not a signal that there's something wrong with the tool or the platform. It's a signal that effort is needed on your end, and here's what that looks like. And really trying to shift the mindset, because otherwise what happens is people will see low adoption numbers and they jump to the idea of, oh, well, we should just cut down our licenses at renewal time because we're wasting money. No, what you're doing is leaving value on the table, and you need to be taking action to get that back into your organization.
Yeah. And I think it's important to have a nuance about, what is the adoption for? Because, somebody could be using the tool to 100% of its capacity and not getting any value out of it. So it really, it's necessary to understand, what are the features, what are the adoption patterns which actually drive performance. And you could only be using a tool to 10% of its capacity, but you're getting fabulous value out of it. So you have to really, sort of join the dots between the adoption and performance.
Definitely.
There's another question here. Microsoft did a lot of work to create CSM profiles. What skills and background do you think CSM should ideally have?
Yeah, that's a question we get quite a bit, and I have not read in detail the Microsoft recommendation, so I can't speak to what they have. But from what I've seen, and when we're working with customers, this always comes up because they always want skill development and training as part of their efforts. One of the biggest things that keep coming up are soft skills are so important. Having people that can really have a conversation, knows how to build a relationship with their customers, and learns how to take and build trust from the very beginning, so that the customers will have faith in their recommendation and actually do some of what they would like, is very, very key. And sort of wrapped into that, there's a whole list of things, from having listening skills and communication skills, being able to ask the right questions of the right person at the right time. We've done a lot of role plays when we're training customers, and so many of the customer success staff members, when we first start this, they're sort of focused on the wrong things and asking the wrong questions, and you can see the body language of the person who's role playing the customer executive, and it usually goes off the rails pretty quickly. And then after you walk through some other steps on how to build rapport and help them understand what are the concerns of the customer and how to handle some of the tricky questions, they're much more confident. They're much more able to communicate and deliver effectively, which I think is really key. And it's always exciting to see that transformation. And I think also having that positive mindedness and really the tenacity to keep things going is pretty key. Related to that too, many times we see customer success folks needing to be experts on how to achieve business outcomes, not a technical outcome. And some of the challenges that we've seen are so many folks often will come from a background of, I was formerly in a support organization, or I was a trainer, but not necessarily I'm a business outcomes expert, and my customer will have faith in me because they see me able to solve problems they can't solve on their own. So really getting them in that business mindset is pretty key. And related to that is a lot of the change management skills and helping your customer understand how to drive adoption and drive effective use in a way that will create business value, and always linking back to that and what are the steps they need to take are pretty key. So I think that there's a lot around that. And there's some client domain knowledge. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to add, I think for the change management aspect, it's important as well externally, of course, for the clients. But I think it's also equally important internally, because I think often, especially when you're initiating customer success right at the outset in a company, it is a game changer. It is, as we've said, that it is something which is holistic. So I think having change management skills internally, so that you're continually actually evangelizing internally what is your added value doing customer success. So that takes a lot of change management skills internally as well. A lot of
it definitely does.
Well internally, I think that's necessary to have. And I'm just going to give a shout out. We've given a shout out to several of our friends, and we'll give a shout out here to another of our friends, is Kelly Lucas, who actually says, you need to be pioneers. And she's actually written a book called Pioneers, and it's talking about customer success managers being pioneers. So her book's coming out this year. So a little shout out to you, Kelly, for that. And I agree. I think, you have to have that leadership and that kind of pioneer mentality, I think, in order to drive customer success internally in a company.
Absolutely, and I'm really excited to read Kelly's book. She is fantastic, and I urge everyone when it comes out, check it out, because Kelly's great and knows a lot in this area. I think the other thing too that has really been interesting has been the confidence to be proactive with customers, and consistently I'm finding that a lot of customer success managers, they're not afraid, or they tend to be a little bit hesitant or afraid to lead the clients and to guide them, but also to help hold them accountable for achieving the outcomes that they said they wanted to achieve. And it's a delicate balance of how to do that, but many customers do want to say, please hold me accountable, keep me on track. I will get sidetracked if you don't. And many customers are eager for this help, yet so many customer success managers are not comfortable in that role and moving things forward. And I think that's pretty key.
Yes.
And then to your point, sort of that value enhancer, making sure that they are always coming back and focused on, we're doing all this for the sake of this business outcome that you want, and look at all the value that you are getting in your organization, and just making sure that people are constantly aware of the value that they're getting, so that they will continue to have a relationship with your organization, continue to renew, and continue to want to do more because they're seeing so much value that they're getting. It's really exciting stuff. So Sue, maybe that's what I have, and I think we've covered some good stuff there, and we have just a couple of questions left in the time that we have. But maybe you can share, what are some best practices for capturing and tracking CSM activities in Salesforce?
Yeah, so we have seen in Salesforce, but indeed in any other CRM, that often customer success teams are starting to actually create their processes and workflows, and are starting to actually capture and track all their customer success management activities. And I think certainly to start off with, when you're initiating a customer success organization, you can certainly do this, and perhaps up to a certain number of clients. And this, of course, depends on your products, your complexity of your product and your markets. But I think as a company really starts to expand and acquires more and more clients, or your existing clients start to expand exponentially, which of course I hope that happens, I think there are certain limitations of using a CRM for customer success management purposes, at least. I think, if you look at a customer success platform and see what it does, it really does allow a customer success team to grow in a more cost-effective way, and to scale the business with positive impact. Just to give a few ideas, and you can actually remove repetitive, low added value tasks. You can actually identify accounts at risk, with a health score, or opportunities to actually expand. It also allows you to automate certain tasks based on triggers and behaviors. And of course, you can create different workflows and include customer journey milestones and cohorts and different segmentations, etc. So it really has fantastic value in terms of scaling customer success. I think the customization of a CRM, Salesforce or anyone for that matter, is quite challenging because of the nature, the static nature which we referred to earlier of a CRM. And I think this really implies more customization efforts if you're going to do this, because I think a CRM lacks the depth of data and functionality that you need in order to really personalize the experience for customers. I think a CRM also lacks bionic rules and the intelligence of a customer success platform to really pull together all the data from different sources and have it consolidated in something which makes sense and which you can actually action upon. So I think the CRM is not really designed to scale and trigger those different notifications, etc. However, having said this, I think that we have seen that you can actually use CRM to start with, and what I have seen are some examples. For example, you can create customer journey milestones post-contract. For example, in the opportunities on a CRM, you can create the so-called second funnel for the post-contractual partnership with the customer. and you can actually assign the opportunity owner to the customer success manager. We can also actually integrate in the second funnel different post-contractual milestones, and these can be triggered either with actions or call to actions within the opportunity. For example, you could indicate the completion of the onboarding stage. You need to define, of course, when you consider the onboarding stage to be final. And this, of course, will depend on whatever criteria is defined between you as a vendor, the customer. You can also create automatic mails and notifications after certain time spans or triggers. For example, you can imagine that, you know, after certain milestones, you could send out surveys like a customer satisfaction survey or an NPS, or communicate some kind of joy of actually achieving the first time to value or the first part of the success plan or whatever it is, and sending automatic emails or even actually engaging one-to-one with the customer. And we've also seen the CRM as an essential place for the relay data between sales and CS. So you can even actually define a template within the CRM where you can say, right, this is the minimum amount of information which I need as a customer success manager in order for me to do my job and go forth in partnering the customer after the contract is signed, and vice versa. And also the CRM, of course, can be used for doing some internal task definition and delegations. So those are some of the ideas. I'm not exhaustive, of course, but you know, there are specific tools for specific roles. And I think the advantage of a customer success platform is that you can actually aggregate all the data together in one 360-degree partnership view.
Great. Yeah, you know, I think you've touched on a lot of great stuff there, and you know, I think there is a lot of hope for CRM tools to help with customer success and to help with the internal alignment to break down some silos. So, you know, again, there's definitely value to having all those tools, and they can be used in a lot of creative ways, but the tools alone are not going to solve anything. I see that we are just about out of time here, so I think you know, we didn't get to all questions, but Sue, why don't you let people know how they can contact you if they have questions or would like more help?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know if you can see the slide here. So you can contact me at sue@successtrackenterprise.com. So yeah, I'd be very, very thrilled actually if you could contact me. So either for consulting, either for the training, which we're developing together with you, Jason, which is absolutely fabulous to be a partner. It's absolutely great. And yeah, I'm happy actually to also, if anybody's in the Lisbon or Paris area, I also organize meetups, so you can actually contact me there, see me there physically. So if you're in the Paris area or the Lisbon area, then you're welcome to come and I meet you face to face. That'd be absolutely fantastic.
Super. Thanks, Sue, so much. And for folks looking to contact me, my name is Jason Whitehead, and you can catch me at info@trituns.com or come over our website, trituns.com. And again, we do have a YouTube channel, trituns.co/YouTube with capital Y, capital T. And we will be posting this webinar out there. We have a variety of other videos, and we'll be adding more this year, so we encourage you to come check it out. And we also are in the process of organizing a meetup in DC and possibly one in New York City, so would love to meet people as well too. Thank you so much. And just a couple of other last-minute things to think about. As I mentioned, we do offer a variety of training consulting services, and Sue and I are soon to be launching a new and exciting ongoing subscription-based professional development program that we're very excited about. But in the meantime, we do have our online customer success and software adoption training programs, as well as a variety of in-person trainings and workshops as well. So really excited about that. And Sue, I think you had one last thing to share.
Yeah, so here we are. You can see this. So this actually resumes what we do at Success Track Enterprise. So either consulting, mentoring, or the training program, which Jason just mentioned. So be pleased to contact, and feel free to contact either Jason or myself. And we look very forward to actually helping you if you have any needs for customer success.
Great, fantastic. All right, thank you so much, everyone. We hope you found this helpful. And if you have, please let us know. We'll probably be doing some more of these in the future, and we really hope everyone has gotten some good ideas out of this session today. And thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.